Alright. Hey everyone. The castle here. About to build some stuff. So I've been kind of doing research, been reading the Blam manga, and I've just been kind of thinking in my head like how I want to try and incorporate my own style of this style of world that'll feel good for a sort of open world survival thing. And also too, I have additional like improvements that I need to make sure that are in place for the level editor in general. Just little stuff here and there, like when I'm inside of a volume, I should be able to select other prefab volumes that are inside of a prefab volume. So what you're looking at right now is two different prefab. Well, it's one prefab copied two times um, in this one thing, and I'm thinking that I guess the general workflow for a lot of this is going to be you have one world that is like your prefab pool, where you would just dedicate the world to building the prefabs that you need, and then after that you start combining them together, and you then build the actual world that's going to have all of the actual like gameplay and everything like that. So you build it's building a lot of maps inside of maps. Now I know with the hierarchical instancing sort of system, like it kind of takes a bit of getting used to. It really changes how you can do any of this stuff. So like all of this is prefabs, but you'll notice that this particular like um, staircase like this that kind of goes up this way and like this. These are actually prefabs that are inside of the prefab. So this is another prefab just for these stairs. And if I modify the stairs now to make them look good, or change the meshes around a little bit, add railings and stuff like that, um, it'll work out okay because it'll then be propagated all over the rest of the map. That's anywhere else that's using this prefab, even if this prefab is being used multiple times within this larger prefab, which is this sort of open space. So there's a lot of stuff. I don't know. I'm very much sort of just kind of getting my mind wrapped around the whole world building aspect, right? And figuring that out, and kind of figuring out like how to best incorporate all of the level design and everything like that, and leave room for it to be done with multiplayer um, as the main tool. I'm also leaning pretty heavily, although there is another name that popped up uh, while I was reading Blame, a name that I thought would be really good for the game um, is a Technomad. Damn, damn, Technomad. That's fucking awesome. So like you'd be like a Technomad. Um, for the most part, pretty much Blame sort of hits the nail on the head for a great deal of everything that would just fit so well with the game. Like, I mean, you have crazy, weird biological creatures that you got to deal with. Maybe you don't really know what the fuck you're gonna run into, and the idea of the administrators that like govern these areas, they don't really care about humans, but like they will care if you try to access the internet. You know the um, if you try to access like the core functions for the builders and stuff like that, and they all kind of try to. It's sort of like the immune system for this overall like giant system, where the builders are just sort of building away. Now that's amazing. One of the other things too I like about it is that you really don't have to tell the story. You can show the story. Um, you literally can just place statues, or you can have like interesting stuff. Like you don't really ever have to actually come out and say anything. You don't have to, I don't have to have any of my crappy dialogue or crappy English skills getting in the way with like spelling corrections or whatever. Okay, that's easy to solve anyway, regardless, right? But like you can kind of just show everything. You don't have to worry about um, putting the words down on paper for everyone to see and understand for the story. And that kind of makes a lot of sense. So, um, one thing's for sure: the way the city is kind of structured. I guess I'm calling it a city, but it's really you have these like nodes, right? But the nodes aren't really uniform in blame. In my game, these nodes are probably going to be very uniform. There's quite a few of them. But like minor spoiler warnings also, by the way. Um, I'm thinking so there is actually like a sunlight and everything like that, and it does actually have like day and night cycles that are visible if you want to technically um, go about it. I'm not against that actually. I don't want to copy it blow for blow, but there's definitely a lot to think about here. There's definitely a lot to take in here. Like this is brilliant shit. This is really brilliant stuff. And it works really well with what I got because hierarchical instancing being a system in which I can mass produce, large amounts of stuff and then still make it manageable for very small, like one developer to actually manage these like very, very large levels because everything is instanced and then reused and then instanced again. Um, and then it also makes it better for the multiplayer level editor because when you're playing the actual game, everything is loaded in a much more efficient way where there's no replication of the world outside of objects that absolutely need to be replicated. Um, so when you do the entire like big open level, none of the level geometry actually is replicated. It's all static. All of it's just loaded in as static objects that never move, and the client and the server are all responsible to just spawn these objects in the correct locations. Um, you know, they both have the same files and everything. It's assumed at that point if you're actually playing the game that both the client and the server have the same files and they load the same save game file type stuff, um, making things very efficient. But with the level editor, you can't assume that everything's static because at any moment any player can go in and modify the world and do modify things. So you can't assume any of it's going to be static at all. You have to assume that it's all going to have to be malleable in some way, shape, or form. And what that does is it makes things a lot less efficient because now all those objects do need to be replicated. You now end up having this like huge amount of stuff. So if you use the hierarchical instancing, you can reduce the overall, the overhead greatly because you can work on small chunks of level at a time with your friends rather than trying to just load the whole thing at once and hope for the best. In which case, you're going to hit some kind of a limitation or, whatever, right? So this actually works really well because it helps you avoid those kinds of limitations and everything like that. Now, one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting is that this allows me to kind of get away from doing the terrain, the large outdoor terrain environments. I am actually thinking that I want to do things differently in terms of like how this works. I do actually want to have some terrain. I do want to have some terrain and stuff like that. Like I actually like stuff like this. So I'm actually thinking that what I'm going to do a little bit differently is that my nodes that I place down will be these big, tall, like blocky objects, essentially with these, big, tall walls and bridges going across. And when you look up, but when you're all the way down, like you can actually reach the ground level and you'll be down in this kind of an environment where it's like this, right? and you'll be able to actually sort of have some terrain and rocks and cliffs and things of that nature. But then you can look up again, and or go like sort of like in between the nodes where you have like this kind of stuff going on. You have a chance to actually see some like more organic level geometry and everything like that. And I think that that actually makes a lot of sense. That would actually be really cool to do. Um, so I like the idea of kind of meeting somewhere in the middle where it's not so much, like it's exactly like Blame, but it's kind of like you get you get this sort of organic mix, and then you go for a little bit, and then you go into a cave or something, and then the cave leads you into one of the other tiles, and then these big things, these big tile thingies, have like um, are designed in such a way where they're kind of just you just jam them next to each other, and then you go through and you kind of fill in the blanks later to like you put the bridges in and fill in the space where maybe there's lava underneath this one, maybe there's water, maybe there's structures that go underneath the earth, or whatever. And I think it just gives a little bit more um, difference in how things can be constructed, but even still, it's very much uh, still very much inspired by Blame. And I think that's about it, really. So with that said, I think I probably should have mentioned this right away as well. Also, I put up a new version of Revulsion that now has that bug fixed or at least addressed, so that it doesn't cause a showstopper error. That should be fixed now, and it should be working correctly. So the production of the new game actually officially starts today, and I'm already kind of plucking away at the ideas and how I'm going to go about doing stuff, and it feels pretty good. I'm going to have to make some. I'm probably going to work on focusing on the editor a little bit more so that it's a little easier to work with, because placing prefabs inside of prefabs at the moment feels a little bit clunky, and it can definitely be made to be about a lot more efficient. Um, that's really about it. So I don't know what else to really bring up at this point in time, other than start expecting to see some pretty interesting screenshots of some very interesting stuff. Now, one of the other things too that I noticed while looking at Blame's geometry, at least in most cases, you'll start to see sort of none of these are really good examples at the moment. Hold on, I'm probably just spoiling a ton of shit. Sorry. Uh, you see how like these walls almost almost feel a little bit like I could replace the default texture with a sort of cement text material, and just kind of use a triplanar or something along those lines, and just have it be like a smooth sort of cement that with that looks like it's a little bit beat up in some spots, and like 90% of the geometry will be already textured. Like Blame seems to have a ton of just cement. I honestly think I honestly think that a lot of this really could just be broken down into having like a one really decent fair, semi-complex material, and I can just sort of slap that onto all of the base objects rather than bothering to have like this prototype material. I could I could probably, yeah, seriously. And I even think that the texture of this sort of brown cement like this would probably work just fine. You just make like a smooth version of that and have it be built so that it doesn't repeat as much. So like maybe it has like a normal map or something like that that helps it not look like I'm just using like a tiny texture on these big surfaces. It has to look like it has to be something that can easily fit on these on these bigger surfaces and stuff like that. And the same thing for the metal as well. Like I could easily just kind of go with metal that I've already got. Like I have this sort of metal like this down here, over here in the slime and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, with that said, I think that there's actually a lot of progress that's going to be going on with this. My main concern at the moment though is just getting the level editor so that it's a little bit easier to work with. But now that I'm not concerned with supporting Revulsion 1 with the level editor, um, this does actually kind of make things a lot easier on me. There's a lot less pressure in terms of how I'm going to move forward with this. Like I actually think I'm just going to start plucking away at it. Like I'm going to start thinking about the inventory system. I'm going to start thinking about the actual like movement, the combat. I'll probably be using like placeholder characters and stuff like that for a while. Um, but yeah, this will probably start to come along a lot faster than I think what a lot of people are ready for. Like a lot of people are probably, oh, he just started. It's probably gonna take like a year before we even get something that looks semi-playable. No, I think this will start to come together a lot faster than that. Um, Especially if I'm just if I'm just working with placeholder materials and shit. But honestly, I really do think that like a decent cement texture or something that's just meant to repeat. I mean, just to capture that art style that Blame tends to have, um, with a lot of its geometry. I'm trying to find a really good example, but it's like it's being stubborn right now. I'm not sure. Yeah, see, like this is just one cement. It's like a cement on that pillar, and yeah, a lot of it is just like the actual geometry itself. You just got to be creative with that. Like I could, I have like one cement, and you just slap on sort of all of this, um, and then you have like a metal, tileable metal. So a tiling cement and a tileable metal, probably using like a triplanar material, was probably look at this whole thing, outside of the fact that there's like pipes and wires and stuff like that. Like you just get those extra sort of details in there. But yeah, like a lot of this is pretty much one material. A lot of it really isn't that complicated. Uh, yeah, like right here as well. Like seriously, it's just. So I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. I mean, every once in a while you'll see areas that are a lot more detailed that have a little bit more of a unique look to them, but for the most part, like yeah, stuff like this. But like it's not terribly difficult to make rooms that look like this. Even the doors often look like the walls. So, like in this particular case, you have like a wall that just closes, and all you see is just some like caution stripes at the bottom, and it's a fucking block. It looks like a block. Okay, so yeah, um, I'll probably be getting a lot of stuff together very quickly with this. I think. So this week we'll be seeing some stuff. We'll be seeing some progress on this front. Um, The level editor will be multiplayer. Everything is going to be multiplayer. This will be a multiplayer open world survival game with that sort of architectural design concept. And it just, yeah, I don't know. My gut's telling me that this is just going to work really well for everything that I need to get done. There'll be areas like this, there'll be areas like this between the bigger open areas, and then you'll start seeing stuff that's a little bit more um, like this. And there'll be prefabs inside of prefabs inside of prefabs. So yeah, I, you know what? I might even just do it today. Like make the default texture the fucking that one brick or that one sort of cement, and just get rid of the grid. You know, the white, the block mesh grid, and just make the yeah, yeah. It's probably super straightforward. Just kind of get things started that way. So anyway, with that said, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna end the video now. But yep, expect some cool shit. Pretty much this week. There's just gonna be a lot of really interesting things happening very quickly, all over the place here, and yeah.